So remember when I said that my brain was a little fuzzy and hard to get up this morning? I totally forgot to ask somebody to help me with the Wonder Box this morning. So, at the risk of totally embarrassing myself, is there anyone who'd like to help me with the Wonder Box? I see some hands over here. Okay, you guys want to come up together? You want to come together? Yeah, okay, come with me. Let's go. Oh, you got to put your shoes on, dude. What? You want to come too, Finian? Come on. We can go together. It can be a group activity today. All right, first, can we tell all these wonderful people who you are? What's your name?
Luke.
Luke. What about you?
Elijah.
Hi, Elijah. And who's over here behind me?
Finian.
Hi, Finian. All right. Who's going to open it up? Somebody open it up.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Let's just open it. Come on. Do it together. Slide it open. There we go. All right. What's in there? Show it to each other. You see that? Anybody know who that is? Yeah? No? No idea? Does it say something at the bottom?
Mrs. Francis E. W. Harper.
Yeah. Say it one more time. You were right. Say it again.
Mrs. Francis. E. W. Harper.
Yeah, Frances Harper. Have you ever heard that name before? Yeah? Well, she's a pretty cool lady, and I thought I could tell you about her today. Would that be okay? Yeah. So, here. And I actually even put a really big picture of her up here so everyone else can see too. So she did some really cool things a long time, well, not that long ago, and I'm going to tell you about her. Would that be okay? All right. Thanks for your help, guys, in rescuing me from my foggy head. Yes, thanks. So who here has heard the name Frances Ellen Watkins Harper? Oh, really? Oh, that's really exciting. I actually love that. Okay, so she's often just referred to as Frances Harper, but I just love her full name. She's got one of those great full Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, right? So this is one of our Unitarian ancestors. She belonged to the Unitarian Church of Philadelphia, but that's not really where her story begins or where it ends. And she's really just a really cool lady that too many people don't have any idea who she is. So I thought we'd fix that today. We often quote Theodore Parker, who was then quoted by Martin Luther King Jr., who was then quoted by Obama, who said that the arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice, right? So the part of that quote that often gets left off from Theodore Parker is that, and I cannot see the end. I don't know that I've got that quite right, but he basically says he can't see the end of where that arc goes. But that didn't release him or anyone who's quoted him or us from the responsibility to participate in bending that arc anyway. And Frances Harper was one such person. So I've got some notes here so I get it right because she deserves to get it right. So in 1825, she was born. And she was born a free woman in Massachusetts. And she was raised by her uncle, who was an AME, or African American Methodist Episcopal Church minister. And he was also a very, very active abolitionist. Does anybody know what an abolitionist is? Can somebody tell me what an abolitionist is? Come on. It's not that hard. Yeah? Okay. What's an abolitionist?
An abolitionist is a person who is in favor of the ending of slavery.
Right. Yeah. And usually not just in favor of, but also working hard to make that happen, right? And willing to do some things to advocate for that to happen, right? So yeah, he was working to end slavery in America. And that was how he raised Frances Harper. So she grew up and she became an abolitionist. But she had some other claims to fame, too. She actually wanted to be a writer, and she published her very first book of poetry when she was only 20. That would have been in 1850. And then she was the very first African-American woman to have a short story published in America. Her book of poetry is called Forest of the Leaves, and I'm spacing on the name of her short story at the moment, so I apologize for that. But they're beautifully written, and I encourage you to look them up if you haven't read them before. So she continued her uncle's work for abolition and a lot of other justice work in the world, and then she faced a really serious setback, well, really our whole country did, when the Fugitive Slave Act was passed in 1850. And this was this really negative piece of law that allowed people to claim that slaves, people who had been freed, that enslaved people who had been freed were just runaways and would capture them by the police and send them back to slavery, which was really not cool and not a good law. And so Frances Harper actually moved further north, and that's how she ended up in Philadelphia. And that's where she met a bunch of Unitarians and eventually ended up joining the Unitarian Church there at the First Unitarian Church of Philadelphia. And she would actually read her poetry from their pulpit regularly because her poetry is full of calls for equality. And not just for blacks and for those who had been freed and those who were still enslaved, but she also then decided to put her hand towards another part of the arc for justice, towards women's rights. And she worked really, really diligently towards women's suffrage, because at this point in our history, women didn't have the right to vote. That was just a thing that guys could do, and particularly white guys, right? Wasn't a thing that black men could do either. So she worked really, really hard for that, and as she was doing that, she worked to help run the Underground Railroad. Does anyone know what the Underground Railroad is? Somebody besides who want to tell me what the Underground Railroad is? Say that for me again.
Slaves from the south to the north.
Yeah, so it was a secret organization of lots of people working together to get people out of slavery and into the north where they could live as free people, right? It was really dangerous and really hard work, and she helped run a portion of it. All at the same time, she was teaching and she was writing poetry and she was working for women's suffrage, and oh my gosh, the list of things she did is just amazing and really long. She actually co-founded the National Association for Colored Women, which worked to mobilize women of color around women's suffrage. But what I want to say is she did all this amazing work for justice, and a couple of things are true. Not any of us know her name. And she died in 1911, 9 years before the 19th Amendment was passed. So for those who don't know, the 19th Amendment is an amendment to our Constitution that gave women the right to vote. It's a really big deal. It's a really cool thing. And she had worked really, really hard to see that happen, and she died just short of it happening. So when we talk about the arc of justice, when we talk about how we are moving in the world to work for a better community, for a better world, a better nation, I want us to remember people like Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. 1, for the stories that don't get told often enough. 2, for the leaps of faith that were taken, and she didn't necessarily see them through to the end. But she had faith that her hand on the ark and every other hand on the ark with her would work together for something beyond what she could see or beyond what she could benefit from. So remember this name from now on, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper.